about that tonight. I want to talk to you really about allowing God, who is the ultimate artist, to take the mess in our lives and create a masterpiece. So, I don't know a lot about art, y'all. But one of the names that I do know is Pablo Picasso. So, and if you look on your tables, a couple of his different paintings I have throughout here. So, as I was preparing for this paint night, I decided to do some research on Picasso and his contributions to the art world. So, not only is he considered one of the most important and well-known artists of the 20th century, but he's also credited with founding what they call the Cubist movement. So, Cubism is defined as an avant-garde art movement that changed forever the face of European painting, while simultaneously affecting contemporary architecture, music, and literature. Subjects and objects in Cubism are broken up into pieces and rearranged in an abstract form. So you can see in the pictures, like it's different shapes and things that he will put together to create a new picture. So I began to think of God and how much like Cubism, he takes the broken pieces of our lives and rearranges them into something completely new. In Romans 8:28, that's her scripture, God promises to use all things for our good. Not just the good pieces or the pieces that we're proud of, but all of the pieces, the broken pieces, the hurt pieces, the shameful pieces, the pieces we'd rather hide or throw away. He uses those very pieces to create our masterpiece. Now, Picasso was considered to be this brilliant artist and innovator, and as I began to study his famous quotes, God began to reveal to me a much deeper, almost biblical aspect to many of them. For instance, Picasso is quoted as saying that every act of creation is first an act of destruction, which made me think about my favorite Bible verse, which is Isaiah 61:3. And it says, to provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty for ashes. By definition, ashes are ruins or remains, as after destruction or burning. So isn't it just like God to take the ruins and remains left after life's devastation to create something beautiful? The problem that most of us face, though, is that we're unable to completely give God our ashes after we go through certain situations. It almost becomes easier to sit with the pain and the embarrassment and the shame. We become comfortable in our ashes. In biblical times, when people were in mourning, they would literally sprinkle ashes on their head as a sign of sorrow. Instead of exchanging our crown of ashes for the crown of beauty, we continue to wear them. Some of us have learned to cope with our ashes. Some have learned to clean up our ashes enough so that the outside appears clean, but the inside still contains the residue. And then there are others of us whose ashes won't allow us to hide them, and they're on display for the whole world to see. No one knew that better about having their ashes on display than the woman at the well, aka the Samaritan city girl. Now, for those of you not familiar with the city girls, they are a rap duo from Miami. They consist of JC and Young Miami. But for my older generation who don't know the city girls, y'all remember Trina, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so Trina walked so that the city girls could run.
That's right.
Yeah. Correlation.
Fact.
But long before the city girls were getting flued out, we find our woman at the well. I guess she wasn't getting flued out, they had airplanes, but I guess she was getting cameled out, whatever they had. So much so that when we meet her, she had been through 5 husbands and was shacking up with her latest boo. As Brother Future would say, everyone knew she was for the Samaritan streets. And because of this, she has become shunned by her neighbors. Now, just like the woman with the alabaster box that we talked about at the brunch, the woman at the well was a woman known for her sin. The story never mentions her name, but it does mention her sin. The story also doesn't give much background on how she came into her current lifestyle. We don't know if maybe she had been abused or she had low self-esteem, which caused her to look for love in all the wrong places. Or maybe she was just a hopeless romantic who fell for every Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and told her she was. We may never know her why, but we all know her what. And what we know is that she had become ashamed and ridiculed, so much so that she avoided the people in her town. So we meet her in John 4, and I'm going to read a couple of other scriptures, my paper Bible. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, weary as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman from Samaria?" For Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. So Jesus met this woman at the well at the 6th hour. That would have been around noon, a time of the day when the weather would have been the most humid. Because of this, most women would draw their water from the well either early in the morning or later in the evening when it was cooler, but not your girl. You see, her shame had caused her to come to draw water during the time when no one else would be there. If we go back to verse 4, it also says that Jesus passed through Samaria. Now, this is significant because although this was the usual route taken by most travelers from Judea to Galilee because it was the shortest, most Jews avoided this route altogether. They avoided this route because Jews during this time considered Samaritans to be an unclean people due to their mixture of Jewish and Gentile blood. So to avoid defilement, they would bypass Samaria and take a longer route. But we know that Jesus doesn't follow man's traditions, nor does he avoid those of us that people consider defiled. In fact, just like the Samaritan woman, he will literally go out of his way to meet you at your well, aka your broken place. That being said, even the Samaritan woman was shocked at Jesus' request for a drink. She said, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So here's a woman that's used to being shunned by society for being a woman, culturally for being a Samaritan, and within her own community because of her reputation. Now, let me ask you, have you ever had a situation in your life that caused you to retreat into shame? I think we've all been there. You may have never experienced the shame by a whole community like our Samaritan sister, but maybe the shame you dealt with was in secret. Where it was her neighbors who judged her, maybe your harshest judge was yourself. And the same